In this video, you will learn about the tools needed to run the Brightcove Native Player SDK for iOS sample apps. To run the iOS sample apps, you will need Xcode installed on your computer. This is Apple's IDE for developing apps for macOS, iOS, watchOS, and tvOS. An IDE is the integrated development environment used to build and debug software applications. You can download it for free from the Mac App Store. Although it is not required to use CocoaPods, it makes building your projects much easier. You can learn more about CocoaPods as well as download and install the latest version from their site. CocoaPods is a dependency manager, which you will use to add the Brightcove SDK framework along with other needed libraries to your project. The Brightcove Native Player SDK for iOS is built on top of the AV Foundation framework, which allows video playback on Apple devices. The native SDK supports both MP4 and HLS streaming and uses FairPlay for content protection. The native SDK integrates with advertising and analytics, and it allows you to play content from your Video Cloud library. The iOS sample apps can be found on GitHub. Here you will find sample code written in Objective-C and Swift. There are samples for iOS devices and Apple TV, which uses tvOS. You will find good information in the README files. Objective-C is a superset of the C programming language, which provides object-oriented capabilities and a dynamic runtime. It adds syntax for defining classes and methods. Swift is the new open-source programming language for Apple and Linux devices. It is more intuitive to use and is similar to JavaScript. It can be added to existing Objective-C code. Here is the basic video player sample app that we will run in Xcode. We will run the Objective-C version. Notice the files in the sample folder. The pod file tells CocoaPods which library dependencies to add to your project. I am opening the pod file in a text editor. Here we define the GitHub location for the Brightcove pod specs. These define the details for a version of a pod library. Next, we define the iOS platform version that we want to target. Use frameworks tells CocoaPods to use frameworks instead of static libraries. While a library is basically a set of functions that you call, a framework has built-in behavior that you define. You subclass the framework in your app, and it calls your code at these points. Finally, these lines pull in the latest Brightcove SDK framework into our project. Let's run the pod file to add library dependencies to our project. First, open a terminal session and navigate to your project folder. I am typing the command pod install. You can see that a .x workspace file has been created in the project folder. This is what we will open and work with in Xcode. Here is the .xc workspace file in Xcode. I am selecting the top-level project and expanding the team property. This team field is optional. You need to specify it if you want to distribute your app on the App Store. To do this, you would select a team that you belong to in the Apple Developer Program. The team name is required for code signing. To run your app in the simulator, you can leave this field as none. You can see that it really doesn't take much code to create an app that plays video using the Brightcove Native SDK. Let's run the app in the simulator. I am selecting a virtual device and selecting the Run button. Here you can see our video playing in the virtual device. After you review the sample apps, you'll be ready to create your own app. The quick starts walk you through the steps of creating an app from scratch. There are quick starts for iOS and tvOS apps. In the documentation support site on the SDK landing page, you will find links to the quick start guides. For iOS, you will find a quick start using Objective-C and one using Swift. For tvOS, you will find a quick start using Swift. Next, we will review the code used in the basic video sample app.